Hello students, today in this video of ours, we are going to learn about the cloning vectors. What should be the structure of the vector to help in the cloning or increasing the copy numbers, increasing the copies of the desired gene in the host. So in this we will see what should be the structure and what are the various components that should be there in a vector to help it take the desired gene into the host. Now, most commonly used cloning vectors are plasmids and bacteriophages. Plasmids are these are the circular DNA, which are extra chromosomal DNA, which are present in the bacterial cell. And bacteriophages are the viruses which infect bacteria. So they are commonly used cloning vectors because they both have the ability to replicate within the bacterial cell independent of the chromosomal DNA. So they are not depending on the chromosomal DNA. Independent of the chromosomal DNA, they have the ability to replicate or make the copies. Bacteriophages have high copy number of genome within the bacterial cell. Means bacteriophages have a large number, they can be large number inside the bacterial cell. Whereas plasmids may have 1 or 2 copy number or 15 to 100 copy number per cell. So if the foreign DNA is linked to these vectors, then it is multiplied to the number equal to the copy number of the vector. If whatever is the copy number of the vector, the multiplication copy will be the same. Now, features which are present in the vector itself help in the easy isolation of recombinants from the non-recombinants. We have seen what is recombinant. Recombinant is the DNA which is formed by the combination. So when the desired gene has been incorporated, has been combined with the plasmid DNA, then it becomes recombinant. Now, to separate the recombinants from non-recombinants, we require selectable markers, and these are also present in the vector itself. Now, the components of a cloning vector, if we see, first of replication, because we know that the replication starts from a specific point, which is called origin of replication. So this origin of replication is called ORI, and this ORI is the origin of replication. So this is the first component which is a must for the vector. Then second thing which should be there in a vector is selectable marker. The selectable marker should be there in the vector, which through which we can isolate recombinants from non-recombinants. Then there is ROP which should be present in the vector, because that is the protein which helps to give the number of copy numbers which is adjacent to the origin of replication. Now let me show you the diagram first. This is the vector which is called PBR322. This PBR322 is the first artificially made vector. It's 3 components. First is the origin of replication. Then there should be a polylinker to the clone, to clone the gene of interest, that is ROP. And then there should be antibiotic resistant gene or any other selectable marker which can isolate the recombinant DNA from the non-recombinant DNA. Now, what is a plasmid vector? A plasmid vector is a small circular double-stranded DNA molecule that is distinct from a cell's chromosomal DNA. And plasmids are used experimentally for the purposes which are called vector. And these DNA fragments or the genes of desire, the gene which we want, the gene of interest can be incorporated into the plasmid vector, and by which after the incorporation we can make this a recombinant plasmid. Now, how do we construct a plasmid vector? First of all, we have to cut open the plasmid, and then we have to place the gene of interest. We have to paste it, and this process is done by the restriction enzymes and the DNA ligase. Restriction enzymes are to cut the specific recognition site, cut the specific base sequence, and ligase are to join the DNA. Then you have, once you have inserted this, once you have made this plasmid, then you have to insert this plasmid into the bacteria, and this bacteria will keep on multiplying, and you can make the factories, that you can have the factories to make that particular protein for which the desired gene you have put into the plasmid vector. Now, what features are essential for a plasmid vector? The features which are essential for a plasmid vector are that it should be carried, the replication, origin of replication should be there, the selectable markers should be there, then there are multiple cloning sites should be there, then there are preparation of bacterial plasmid, miniature preparation of bacterial plasmid should be there, and bacteriophage promoters should be there if we are using bacteriophages. Now, this plasmid vector PBR322, this is there in your syllabus. There are various kind of vectors, but in your syllabus, this one vector is there, which is called PBR322. It is a well-established multi-purpose cloning vector in laboratories worldwide, and a large number of derivatives have been created for specific applications and research purposes. And its natural host is Escherichia coli. So the Escherichia coli is the natural host for the PBR322. Now, PBR322, what does this mean? P is for the plasmid, and B and R is named after the names of the scientists who have discovered them. So they are Bolivar and Rodriguez. So B is for Bolivar and R is for Rodriguez. So plasmid made by Bolivar and Rodriguez, and 322 is the code number. They have given the numbers, different code numbers to the different vectors. So this 322 is the code number for this vector, PBR322. Now, if we see the structure of PBR322, that is plasmid, Bolivar, Rodriguez 322, the first artificial vector which was made in the laboratory for cloning, for making the copies of the desirable genes. So here, if you can see, this is a circular plasmid, and here you can see the different restriction enzymes, the different recognition sites are there. This is the recognition site for HIND3, BAMH1, SALH1, PVU2, PST1, PVU1, ECO1, and CLAV1. So total, if we see how many of them are there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So in this PBR322 vector, there are 8 recognition sites, the restriction enzyme sites. These are the restriction enzymes. These are the names of the restriction enzymes. And after that, there are, if you see here inside, this is ampicillin resistant gene. Ampicillin, R means ampicillin. Ampicillin is a antibiotic. So this is the gene which is responsible for ampicillin resistance. This TT, this is tetracycline. So tetracycline is again one antibiotic, and this gene is for the tetracycline resistance. And this is the origin of replication, ORI, and this is the ROP. ROP is the protein which is helping in the functioning of the DNA polymerase. So it is always with the origin of replication, and this is acting as a primer for the production of the replication of the DNA. So this ROP is in besides this ORI. So if we see the structure of vector PBR322, it is having 8 restriction enzyme sites. Then it is having 1 gene for the ampicillin resistance. It is having gene for the tetracycline resistance. It is having origin of replication, and it is having ROP. So these are the components which are present in a vector. Now we will see what are the names. Like Eco R1, we know Eco R1 is for the Escherichia. We know the naming, how the naming is done. First letter is genus, second and third is species, fourth is the strain, and fifth is the Roman number, which is in the sequence of the discovery of that particular enzyme from the organism. So Eco R1 means Escherichia coli, R is the strain, and first was the number. It was discovered from the Eco. So Eco R1. Similarly, we will see others also, like SAL1. Now SAL1 is taken from which enzyme, which bacteria? Streptomyces albus. So Streptomyces albus is the cell, and it is SAL1. So there is no strain, only from the bacteria, simple bacteria it has been taken. Then HIND3. Now HIND3 is being isolated, the restriction enzyme is being isolated from which bacteria? Haemophilus influenza. So HIND3 is being isolated from bacteria Haemophilus influenza. So Haemophilus is H, influenza IN, D is the strain, and 3 Roman means this was the third one to be discovered. Then BAM-H1. BAM-H1 is from the Bacillus amyloquiphanis. Now BAM-H1 is, B is for the Bacillus and AM is for the amyloquiphanis. Now this is the name of the bacteria, H is the strain, and 1 is the number from the discovery number from the that bacteria. Now PUV1. PUV is the Proteus vulgaris. Proteus vulgaris, P is for the Proteus and VU is for the vulgaris. And 1 is that it was the first to be discovered from this organism. So these are the names of the organisms which are present, which are the sites which are present from which these restriction enzymes have been formed. Okay. Now there are, you can see 8 restriction enzyme sites are there, but we want only 1 recognition site in a vector, because if there are more recognition sites, the plasmid can be broken down into many fragments, and then it will be, our purpose will be lost. So we want only, what is the requirement which is very, very essential, is that there should be only 1 recognition site. So we can use only 1 for making for inserting the gene of interest. So this one can be of any one of this. 1 recognition site should be there for the vector, because we want to only cut the vector. We don't want to cut the vector at various places. we want to cut the vector at one place only where we can put the gene of interest. So the molecular scissors, the restriction enzymes which we use to cut the plasmid should be same as the restriction enzyme which we are using to cut the gene, desired gene from the from wherever we are taking it. So we have to cut the desired gene with the same restriction enzyme. So the recognition site should be only one in the vector. Otherwise, we will have fragments of plasmid which we don't want. Okay. Now, origin of replication. Replication starts from origin of replication. Any fragment of DNA, when linked to origin of replication, can be made to replicate. So, for any DNA fragment to replicate, it should be linked to the origin of replication. That is the first requirement. Now, with the help of this, the genetic engineer may control the copy number of the recombinant DNA. Now, copy number of the recombinant DNA depends on the origin of replication and ROP. To recover a high number, suitable origin of replication must be chosen. Now, what is ROP? ROP is also known as repressor of primer, and it is a protein which is responsible for keeping the copy numbers, whatever required copy numbers are there. Now, 322 is the code. What is 322? 322 is the code number. Now, the second component after the origin of replication, which should be there in the vector, is selectable marker. Now, what is selectable marker? These are the genes which help to select recombinants over the non-recombinants. Like as we have seen that in PBR322, there are two selectable markers. What are these? Ampicillin resistant gene and tetracycline resistant genes. These two are the selectable markers. Selectable markers means which can select, which can isolate a recombinant from the non-recombinant. So this, there are two antibiotic resistant genes such as ampicillin resistant and tetracycline resistance. These two are serving as a selectable markers in PBR322. Cloning sites. Now, from where we have to clone, these are the different sites. Now, these sites refer to the recognition sites for restriction enzymes. Now, different restriction enzymes are there and different cloning sites are there. And these are EcoR1, HIND3, PVU1, BAMH1, these we have seen. There are 8 such sites on the PBR322. Now, these are the sites where restriction enzyme cut the DNA. But we have to take only one recognition site to be cut because we want only one cut in the plasmid. Now, cloning process become completed when more than one recognition sites are present. Therefore, ligation is carried out only at the restriction site present on the antibiotic resistant gene. Ligation is what? Ligation is joining. So we want only one recognition site, and this one recognition site will insert the gene of interest, and after insert of gene of interest, we will be having the recombinant DNA, and this recombinant DNA can be selected by the selectable markers, which are antibiotic resistant genes. Now we will see how these antibiotic resistant genes are helping in selection of the recombinants. Now suppose we have taken selectable marker tetracycline resistant gene. Okay. Now here at tetracycline resistant gene, there is BAMH1 recognition site. Okay. Just let's go back to the diagram and see here in this tetracycline resistance gene, the recognition site for restriction enzyme BAMH1 is here. Okay. Now suppose recognition site. Now when BAMH1 is used, now suppose we are using BAMH1 restriction enzyme to cut. So what will happen? It is used for restriction. The foreign DNA fragment will be inserted where? Foreign DNA fragment will be inserted within the tetracycline resistant gene. Clear? Now, if tetracycline resistant gene has got a new gene inside it, the tetracycline resistance will not be present in that. Because what we have done is we have inserted our piece gene of interest at the place of tetracyclic resistance gene. So now that vector is not resistant for tetracycline antibiotic. Now what will happen? Tetracycline resistance is not present in the recombinant now. Now whenever there is new gene of interest has combined with the vector, the recombinant is being formed. That recombinant will not be resistant for tetracycline, but it will be resistant for ampicillin, because ampicillin resistant gene is still there. So how we can separate? The recombinants will grow on a media. We will grow the this bacteria on a medium which is containing ampicillin. So what will happen? The recombinants can grow on the medium because the recombinants are having ampicillin resistant gene, but they will die if we are having the media which is containing tetracycline, because tetracycline resistance is now not present in the vector. Why it is not present? Because now the new gene is being inserted there, and that new gene is the gene of interest, our gene of interest, and the vector is being converted into recombinant DNA. So this recombinant DNA is not resistant, will not show resistance for the tetracycline, because now it is not having gene for the tetracycline, but it will show the resistance for the ampicillin, because ampicillin resistant gene is still there. So this is how we can separate recombinants from non-recombinants, because only recombinants will not show the resistance. Those vectors which are not formed, which have not formed, converted into recombinants, they will show the resistance for tetracycline also, because in them the tetracycline gene is resistant gene is present. On the other hand, non-recombinants will grow on medium containing ampicillin as well as on medium containing tetracycline. So that means those who are growing on both medium, they are the non-recombinants, and those who are growing only on ampicillin medium, they are the recombinant, because recombinant will not grow in tetracycline because now they are not having the resistance for tetracycline. Clear? So in this way, antibiotic resistant genes help in the selecting of transformants. So that's why they are called selectable markers. Selectable markers are the genes which are present in the vector itself, which can select, which can isolate recombinant from non-recombinant. So just now we saw that the selectable markers which are present in the PBR322 vector are ampicillin resistant gene and tetracycline resistant gene. And if we are using restriction enzyme BAMH1, then the gene of interest will come. The cut will be made at the BAMH1, and the gene of interest will come and get attached to the vector in place of the tetracycline resistant gene. So now the recombinant will not have the tetracycline resistance. Now there are alternative selectable markers as well, because this antibiotic resistance markers are very difficult, because we have to take 3-4 things. We have to take the media containing tetracycline, then we have to take the media containing ampicillin, and then we have to isolate. But there are certain alternate selectable markers as well, which are the genes which are producing the enzymes, certain enzymes. So enzyme producing genes can also be selectable markers. For example, like if you remember lac-operon, and gene Z was there, that was for the galactosidase. So this gene coding for the galactosidase, if that is inserted inside it, then what will happen? The galactosidase will get inactive, because the gene, that enzyme is not not present. So what will happen? With the insertion of that gene, which is having this galactosidase, it will inactivate the enzyme, because the enzyme was previously present, which was the gene was present, which was producing the enzyme. But now with the foreign gene which has been inserted, the enzyme will not be produced, it will get inactivated. So that this is called insertional inactivation. Insertional inactivation means inactivation of the gene because of the insertion of a new gene. When we are inserting a new gene, the gene of our interest, the foreign gene, then what will happen? The gene which was present there earlier is getting inactivated, will not be operational. So that is called insertional inactivation. Like we put the BAM-H1 restriction enzyme, so the tetracycline resistant gene was not present, got inactivated. Similarly, here also, when the enzyme producing gene is present and we are putting the foreign gene in place of that enzyme producing gene, the enzyme will not be produced. So it will get deactivated, inactivated, and this is called insertional inactivation. Now what happened then? This bacteria, they are grown on a chromogenic substrate. Now chromogenic substrate is a substrate where we can see the color change. So what will happen when we put this recombinant bacteria having recombinant DNA, when we put them on the chromogenic substrate, the non-recombinants will produce blue colored colonies, because this galactosidase normally used to produce blue color colonies. The recombinants will produce colorless colonies. So now if the blue color is not produced, that means the recombinant DNA is present in the bacteria. Clear? Now this cloning vectors for plants and animals. We are talking about the prokaryotes. Now in plants and animals, when we are talking about the eukaryotic cells, then the cloning vectors for plants and animals should be taken. And the most commonly used vectors for plants are tumor-inducing plasmids. Now, tumor, what is tumor? Tumor is uncontrolled growth of mass of cells. So there is a tumor-inducing plasmid, which is a plasmid which is present in the bacteria, Agrobacterium tumefaciens. Now, this Agrobacterium tumefaciens is having its plasmid, which is called TI plasmid, tumor-inducing plasmid. Now, this is a plant pathogen which is creating tumor in the plants. It is infecting the plant and it is producing tumors in the plant. But what the scientists have done, they have modified this TI plasmid into a cloning vector by removing the genes which are responsible for the pathogenicity. That means now the vector, the vector which we are using now for the plants, that is TI plasmid, it is not capable of producing tumors. It is not capable of producing any infection in the plants. It is just a vector, cloning vector, because we have disarmed it. We have taken out the gene from it, which used to create tumor. So the Agrobacterium tumefaciens is taken, and the TI plasmid is taken out. From this TI plasmid, the tumor-inducing gene has been removed. So what will be left? The left portion is can be used as a vector, which is a disarmed plasmid, which is not capable of producing tumor, but it can be used as a cloning vector, because that plasmid has the capability to replicate and make several copies. So we can use that plasmid to replicate the gene of interest. Similarly, in animals, we are using retroviruses. Now, these retroviruses are responsible for causing or producing cancers in animals. So this cancer is also uncontrolled growth. So what happened from these retroviruses also, these have been disarmed. That means they have also been disarmed. The gene for the cancer producing gene has been taken out, and these disarmed retroviruses are used as cloning vectors for animals. So in animals, what we are using is, we are using retroviruses which used to infect and cause cancers. But now they have been, when we are using them as a vector, they are being disarmed, and now they are not capable of producing cancers. They can be used as cloning vector. So these are the cloning vectors in plants and animals. In plants, we are using tumor-inducing plasmids, and in animals, we are using retroviruses. Now, who is the competent host? Who is the competent host where the bacterial cells, the bacterial cells should take up the vector? What is a host? Host is the one who should take up the recombinant DNA. So competent host refers to the bacterial cells that have the ability to take up the vector. And vector is containing what? Recombinant DNA. So in majority of the cases, the commonly used host is Escherichia coli. And then that is cultured and on a large scale, and the gene of interest can be used for the commercial purposes. Now, when you have to introduce the DNA without vectorless entry of the DNA into the host, then there are several other methods to introduce the DNA without the vector. And these methods to introduce recombinant DNA into competent host is, first of all, the cells. Now, what is the cell made up of? Like, we can use competent host, can be plants, it can be animals, it can be fungus. So if it is a plant, then it is having a cell wall. If it is a bacteria, then also it is having a cell wall. And if it is a fungus, then also it is having a cell wall. So we have to first digest that cell wall. Because where is DNA present? DNA is present inside the cytoplasm for bacteria. And for eukaryotic cells, it is present inside the nucleus. So this has to be removed. So once we have got the cell wall digested, then what is left? It is called protoplast. What is left with the cell membrane is the protoplast. Now this DNA, the plasma membrane is hydrophobic. Hydrophobic is why? Because of the presence of lipids. Because in plasma membrane lipids, it's a bilipid layer. You know the structure of the plasma membrane. So lipids are present. That's why it is hydrophobic. And the DNA which has to be inserted is negatively charged, that we know. So what we should do before getting the DNA into the competent host is that we treat the cells with divalent cations such as calcium ions. Now what will happen because of these presence of these divalent cations, that is calcium ions, the permeability of the plasma membrane for the DNA will increase, and then the DNA temporary small holes will come into the membrane and the DNA can get into the cell. Now once the DNA has got into the cell, then the cell has to be given heat shock. Now what is heat shock? You have to put the DNA, recombinant DNA cells which are having the recombinant DNA, because now the recombinant DNA is inside the cell. Then you have to put that cell on ice, and after ice immediately you have to shift that to the heat means approximately 42 degrees Celsius temperature. So from ice to 42 degrees temperature, from 42 degrees Celsius temperature to ice, from ice to 42 degree temperature. So what will happen? This is called heat shock. And when heat shock is given, then the DNA, the host DNA, will be able to take up the recombinant DNA. So the host DNA will take the recombinant DNA, and the recombinant DNA will be formed into the cell, and it will get incorporated and can form the copies. This is one. This is called treatment of cells with divalent cations. The second thing is microinjection, using microinjections. Now these microinjections are used for the animal cells, and here the recombinant DNA is directly injected into the nucleus. Now there is a membrane, then there is a nucleus, and the DNA has to be put inside the nucleus. So there are very sophisticated instrument. This microinjection is a sophisticated instrument which is used by the professional, highly professional persons which can use this microinjection, and they directly put it, a vacuum is created, and with the vacuum the recombinant DNA is directly put into the nucleus of the animal cell. In animal cell, majority of the cases they use egg cell. So egg cell is taken, and into the egg cell this recombinant DNA is put. Now human egg, you know, it is formed only once in a month. In a cycle of 28 to 30 days, one egg is produced. So you have to be very, very careful when you are using this technique. So through the microinjection, the recombinant DNA can be directly put into the animal cell, but it requires a highly sophisticated devices and the professionals. Then there is another method to put directly the recombinant DNA, that is called biolistics or Gene gun. Now here what will happen, as the name suggests, gun. Gun is what? With the help of the gun, the cell is bombarded with a high velocity microparticles. The gold particles are taken, and these gold particles, they have the DNA with them. So DNA, recombinant DNA is with the gold particle or tungsten particle. Microparticles of gold and tungsten are taken, and through that microparticle, through that gun, at a very high speed, the very high velocity, they have to be entered into the cells. But this speed is very, very important here, because the speed should be such that it should enter the cell but not come out of the cell. At the same time, it should have the speed so that it can enter. It should not get reflected. So it is around 14, not around, it is exactly 1400 feet. 1400 feet it is measured in that, and that should be the speed by which these cells are bombarded with these gold or tungsten particles, so that the recombinant DNA can enter into it. Then disarmed vector, as in the case of A tumefaciens, this we have seen, and the retroviruses, the tumor-inducing plasmid and the retroviruses disarmed. When they are not able to create the infection, they are also used as vectors. So these are the different methods by which the recombinant DNA can be put into the competent host. Now, once the recombinant DNA is inside the host, then it will multiply and it will form several copies of it. So this is how the process is done.